Through one of the books of the Bible. A few months ago, I just kind of sent a poll out to certain members and asked what they like to hear, and as the next book, and the overwhelming response was Deuteronomy. Let's get a deep study and walk through chapter by chapter of a book we don't always get to. We're in the book of Deuteronomy tonight. Deuteronomy chapter 2 is where we are going to be as we are continuing the opening message that Moses is bringing to the people as a reminder to them of a little bit of their history and the things that God had done for them. And this chapter, I believe, is summarized simply in a good way of the God who goes before. One of the greater themes that you see throughout this chapter is God going before the people and getting things ready. Sometimes it's going through and getting promises set up ahead of time for other groups, as we'll get to, as about half of the chapter is about. But the other bit is going in and seeing how the Lord is getting the beginning of the conquering ready for the people and dealing with King Sihon. And there's a reason I threw up that have this image here of a firefighter. This is a group of people that I do not envy. I know we have at least one retired individual from that department that comes in, but it is something special and important to know that these are individuals who are willing and ready to run in, to go in to infernos, to dangerous situations, to go before, to rescue, to save, to pull out these kinds of individuals. And this is what our Father does for us today and has done for His people for so long. He has journeyed before, making plans ahead of time for His people to know and to be able to gather through and come out on the good end. Sometimes the idea of being stuck is also intimidating and scary. Unsure of the direction of life that we're going through and to. And that's what Moses is reminding the people of in this. Is you might have felt stuck for a little bit of time, a short period, but now we're in the action part, the final stages before we get into the conquering. Now our God is actually working with us and working for us. We begin the first three verses is a simple idea of it's been long enough, go northward. The first three verses start out then we turned and journeyed into the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea, as the Lord told me. And for many days we traveled around Mount Seir. And the Lord said to me, you have been traveling around this mountain country long enough. Turn northward. Now there's an important disclaimer that needs to come out about this chapter. And it's simply this. Remember, Deuteronomy, this part, is a summary of the history. This is a summary of the events that are occurring. We're going to be talking about Edom, Moab, and Ammon, and Sihon in just a moment. And throughout this chapter, this is just brief glimpses and mentionings of the things that we're going through. This is actually God's side of the conversation to the people outside of the book of Numbers. You want to know what actually happens with these events, you can go over to Numbers 19 through 26-ish, and you get to see a lot of the stuff that happened here, how Edom responds to the people, how Moab responds to the people. It is not necessarily the picture that God has put forward for them, but what He is putting forward for the people here through Moses as this reminder is, I gave you a job and a purpose, and you are to fulfill those things. Deuteronomy is a reminder, a summary of the history. It is not the history as a whole. But you do see in the first beginning part in these three verses, He had a purpose. The purpose for the wandering is finally coming to an end. The Lord said, if you've been traveling around the mountain country long enough, turn northward. Those 40 years are finally coming to an end. A little bit later in the chapter, He talks, it's been about 38 years. It's finally coming to an end. That older generation is almost all the way faded out. The last few remnants are holding on, and they will be gone themselves. It is finally coming to an end. You can taste getting into that promised land. The excitement that must have been on everybody's mind of going and journeying around. It's really one mountain for a while, and that mountain range for a while. Going and being this nomadic people for 40 years. It's hard. It's frustrating. But the purpose for that is finally coming to an end, which is a simple application. The thing of this is, I need to trust in God's timing. I can imagine how frustrating it would have been for 40 years for people to be wondering, when are we going into this land? What is happening? It feels like we're just in a holding pattern. I have to trust in God's timing, because sometimes His timing creates humility. You definitely see a people that are a lot closer and humbler to the Lord. We read from Joshua at the beginning of the lesson this morning in chapter 24 of them coming and agreeing with Joshua that yes, we want to serve the Lord, we want to submit ourselves to Him. That previous generation didn't seem to have that gumption and those ideals. They were defined as a people who turned and worshipped the golden calf. It seems that every turn griped and moaned and muttered against God and against Moses, how good it was in Egypt and how they should just go back rather than dying and suffering in this wilderness. Here you see people who at least have a semblance of understanding and a desire to serve and to be actually known as God's people. But you also see a dependency that is put up. Hopping forward into verse 7 of Deuteronomy 2, it says here, "For the Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He knows you're going through this great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing." There's been a dependency upon God from this people. Again, a people who, some might remember the things of Egypt, but a lot probably did not. They've lived their life through the wilderness, completely depending on God. No set home, no set lands, no way to till and own the land itself. They are reliant upon their nomadic lifestyle, their animals, and what they could trade and acquire and find throughout. There's a deep dependency on God, coming from quail, coming from manna, coming from water from rocks. God's timing helped mold this new generation to be dependent on Him and the promises and blessings that came from Him. And it also taught some obedience. Here's a people who, when the time came, they went into the land to conquer because they knew they needed to and they knew they could, because they had a God who showed them over and over again, "You stand on my side, and I stand with you." But also that's a deep reminder, He does not abandon His people. And that's an important theme throughout the rest of this chapter as well. I am not abandoning you. This is just not your homeland. This place that you are going through is not for you yet. There might come a time and a place where you get this land, you get these things, but right now it's for another people, it's for another promise. But I have not abandoned you. I am sticking with you through the very end. If you want a big spoiler for this idea, it comes up into verse 31 of this same chapter. The Lord says to Moses, "Behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to take possession, that you may occupy this land. You are going to war, and I am not abandoning you." Just a quick thing to the first two verses of the summary into what is happening as he says, "Then long enough, let's go to where you need to be." But now a good chunk of the rest of the chapter is them traveling through what I've called the family land. Let's pick up in verse 4. "He commanded the people, saying, 'You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the people of Esau who live in Seir, and they will be afraid of you. So be very careful. Do not contend with them, for I will not give you any of their land. No, not so much as for the sole of the foot to tread on, because I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You shall purchase food from them with money, that you may eat, and you shall also buy water from them with money, so that you may drink. The Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He knows you're going through this great wilderness, these 40 years. The Lord your God has been with you. You have lacked nothing.' So we went on and away from our brothers, the people of Esau, who lived in Seir, away from the Arabah road, from Eloth and Ezbion-Geber." Let's just stop right there, because he talks here about Edom, the descendants of Esau, be the twin brother of Jacob, which is the namesake of their nation, is Israel, the other name for him. These are what you would say the closest living relatives that they had at this time. Very close as far as land, as far as family and possessions all went. And the Lord tells them throughout this, you are to deal with them fairly and peaceably. This is not your land. Travel through it. As you're traveling through it, pay for the food, pay for the water, do what is good by them. And you got to ask, why? Why is God telling them this? And I think it boils down to really 5 simple reasons. 1, they were cousins, they were family. There was something to be said through the promises from patriarchs, going back to Abraham and to Isaac. Here I am promising these things to you and to your descendants. Edom is still a descendant, not a direct descendant of the promises, but still a telescopic side of those things. There were blessings that were coming to them. You also see and understand from that section, they were fearful. They had heard what happened in Egypt. They had heard of the battles that had gone on. They understood all of the things that had happened, and they were afraid of Jehovah, of Yahweh, of the God that rescued and brought these slaves out and made them a great traveling nation. And they were existing in this promised land because of God. He said, I gave this land to Esau, and this is their home. Do not quench on it. But you also see the people were forbidden from causing chaos for the Edomites. Show them respect, treat them fairly. Again, you're talking millions of people traveling through this land. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of water. Do with them fairly, as I have done fairly with you. And fifthly, I think it's because Israel was to continue in their trust and continuance in God. He has blessed all of their activities. He has watched over them for these 40 years, and he has spent the last 40 years proving himself to these people. Israel, you do not need to stop and find rest in your family and your compatriots. I am your family. I am your father. I am your provider. I give you what you need. That is the Edom sides of things from verses 4 through 8. But then he moves into the Moab talk. Let's pick up again in verse 8, the second half. And Moses writes, and we turned and we went in the direction of the wilderness of Moab. And the Lord said to me, do not harass Moab or contend with them in battle, for I will not give you any of their land for possession, because I have given Ar to the people of Lot for possession. Then Ammon, formerly who lived there, a people great and many and tall as those of the Anakim, like the Anakim, they also counted as Rephaim, but the Moabites called them Ammon. And the Horites also lived in Seir formerly. But the people of Esau disposed them and destroyed them from before them and settled in their place, as Israel did to the land of their possession, which the Lord gave them. And he says, now rise up and go over the brook of Zered. And we went over then the brook of Zered. Now here is another group of family. Moab, a descendant of Lot. Now if you are familiar with the events of Genesis 19, that starts out the Sodom and Gomorrah story and scenario. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed for their perverseness and their sins. And Lot is the only, really him and his family, the only true survivors, as he and his wife and his daughters flee out of the city. His wife doesn't make it because she turns around to look and see what's there, and she's turned that pillar of salt. Well, Lot and his daughters flee up into the caves of some nearby mountains, and there his daughters, in a desperate desire to prolong the family lineage, either got drunk and seduce him, and both produce children through him. Moab is the offspring of the firstborn daughter. This is something that is not fun to talk about necessarily, but it's still a promise that comes from the descendant side of Abraham. Again, family to Abraham, somebody who gets to get a little blessings from the promises that are there. And here again is a pausing of the conquering of the land. This is not your promised land. This has been given to the descendants of Lot for a reason. And I do find this to be a little bit ironic, because these people are some of the greatest cause for the strife of the people during the time of at least the recording of Numbers. If you go over to Numbers 22 through 25 in verse 9, that's all of the accounts that happen with Balak and Balaam. Balak is the king of Moab. And all of these things are actually occurring at the same time when he is telling Moses in Deuteronomy 2 of the events that are going to happen in Moab. These things are happening concurrently. They come into the land of Moab and say, hey, we want to come through. And Balak is scared and terrified. He wants to do something about these people. So he summons Balaam, who's supposed to be a priest and a prophet of God, to come in to curse the people. You might remember the story with Balaam's donkey and how the Lord has told him, don't go until I tell you to go. Or Balaam's donkey is given the ability to talk, and eventually he tells Balaam, there's an angel of destruction in your way because you've chosen your own greed and gain. And how they get there, and Balak begs Balaam to still curse the people, and he tries over and over and over again. I think it's at least 4 times. He tries to curse people. Instead of cursing them, he ends up blessing them more and more and more, to Balak's chagrin and to his frustration. But Balaam finds a way to really work around the scenario and the situation. If you go over to chapter 25 of Numbers, you see what happens You find out over in 31 verse 16 that through Balaam's encouragement, his plan, his schemes, he causes the people to stumble. In verses 1 of chapter 25 it says, while Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. These invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods. The people ate and bowed to their gods. So Israel yoked herself and himself to Baal of Peor. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the chiefs of the people and hang them in the sun before the Lord, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn against from Israel. And Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill those men who have yoked themselves to Baal of Peor. And behold, when the people of Israel came and brought a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of Moses, in the sight of the whole congregation of the people of Israel, while they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose, left the congregation, took a spear in his hand, and went after the men of Israel into the chamber and pierced them both through, the man of Israel and the woman through their bellies. Thus the plague on the people of Israel stopped. Nevertheless, those who died by the plague were 24,000. This all came about because of Moab. And as you get over to Numbers 31, you see God telling Moses and Moses telling people as well, they're going to pay for their sins. Deal with them justly when the time comes, especially that of Balaam. And you find out over in Joshua that Balaam is dealt with. He is put to the sword for the sins that he brought against the people. But again, even through all of this, the Lord looks and says, I made a promise to Moab. I am going to keep it. And then he comes in again to talk about Ammon. Pick up in verse 18. It says there, today you were to cross the border of Moab at Ar. And when you approach the territory of the people of Ammon, do not harass them or contend with them. For I will not give you any of the land of the people of Ammon as possession, because I have given it to the sons of Lot for a possession. It is also counted as a land of Rephaim. Rephaim formerly lived there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzummim, and the people great and many and tall as the Anakim. But the Lord destroyed them before the Ammonites, and they disposed them and settled in their place, as he did for the people of Esau who lived in Seir, when he destroyed the Horites before them, and they disposed them and settled in their place, even to this day. Again, descendants of Lot. This would be the children of the second daughter that come in. I believe it's Beer Ammon is the full name of that child, and there's derived Ammon from this. And once again, the do no harm command has come forward. And you see, God is working here with these people too. And it's important to get to know who did the conquering. Was it the people? Go to verse 21. A people great, many, and tall as the Anakim, but the Lord destroyed them before the Ammonites. It's interesting to see a note here that God is working not just with the people of Israel, but again with the descendants of Abraham and the family of Abraham. God gives promise. He fulfills his promise. And when you get through and see all these names that are brought in, there's something powerful that we don't understand from the namings that you have to go and look up. The Rephaites, or the Rephims, their name means ghosts. Something scared and terrible. The Emites, or the Ammonites, they're there. Their name literally means terror. The Anakites, remember, there are the giants that are there. Those that, the first group of spies, they said, we're like grasshoppers to them. And the Zamzummites, their name means confused and threatening sound. These are people of terror. They are strong and they are evidently great and evil. But they are nothing compared to the Lord. Again, God does the work of clearing and providing through his promises. There's a common theme you see all throughout this section. As God commands his people, do not bother them. I have given them promise. I have given them a home. I have given them a time and a purpose. They have not yet reached it. Their purpose was to clear out all of the evil in the land there in advance. Do not bother them. Travel through safely. Do right by them. Pay for what you go through. Give back to what you take. Do right by these people. That's a little strange to think when you're talking about those who are coming in and getting ready to conquer and do all sorts of things to the nation and the land. God telling them, do right, do honorably by them. And reminding them and us, they are dwelling in their promises. Let them be and do what is right. But if you notice, I skipped over a bit of the text in that. If you go back up to verse 14 through 17, you can see a note here of history and a reminder to the people. Starting in verse 14, it says, "And the time from our leaving of Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the brook of Zered was 38 years, until the entire generation, that is, the men of war, had perished from the camp, as the Lord had sworn to them. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them, to destroy them from the camp until they had perished. So as soon as all the men of war had perished, and were dead from among the people, the Lord said to me, Today you are to cross." Here is the cleaning up of the past from the people. Any of the rest of the remnant that were there had finally come to their end. They are moving forward. There was a pause in the text in the journey for the families to be made clear, for all to know that the promise of the old generation going away is being fulfilled. Which leads for application to me throughout this section, a reminder of God's faithfulness all throughout this. Here you see a token message screaming of God's faithfulness. He is faithful to his promises. To his people, I'm going to bring you into a land of milk and honey, a land of promise. Something that's been promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is your home, and you will take possession of it. But I've also made promises to Edom, to Esau, to Lot, to Moab, to Lot, to Ammon. These are going to be their homes for a while. This is a land that they can possess. I'm a God holding to my promises. You can trust me and know I will take care of you, because you can see around how I have taken care of my people and those families as well. That I am still involved and around. But he's also faithful in his threats. If you do not stand with me, if you do not behave in the right manners, there will come destruction. If you choose evil and other gods over me, there are consequences. And those threats are shown up a lot more in the Numbers side of the text. But you know that the Lord does what he does and says what he says. He is faithful to his threats and to the consequences that comes through. And reminding me to this, he is always involved. A lot of people like to look and put a special hedge of protection around Israel, and there was that there. But the Lord was a lot more involved in the world than sometimes we want to give him credit for. Again, he was responsible for Ammon getting their land. And it's an interesting kind of decalogue throughout this whole section, talking about Edom and Esau. Coming in and saying, here they took the land. Here you see in the Moab section that little blurb of here they destroyed their enemies. But in the Ammon section, he comes in and says, it was me who actually gave them the things they needed to do that. I came in advance and cleared the way for them to come and actually conquer the land that is there. I am always involved. I am always. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he is involved in our lives today. He plays significant roles in our lives today. Maybe not in a physical, literal way as he did with the people then. But he helps us in so many ways. Don't discourage and don't think he's not there. He has always played a role and always will play a role. God is faithful. But now he kind of begins to end the section, this chapter, on the other side. The first half was saying, don't conquer, don't take the land, it's not for you. But now you get to see the tone that comes in for the conquering. Let's start up in verse 24. You get to see this interesting bit that comes up in verse 24 of the story continuing. It says, rise up and sit on your journey and go over the valley of Arnon. Behold, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and in his land. Begin to take possession and contend with him in battle. This day I'll begin to put the dread of fear of you on the peoples who are under the whole heaven, who shall hear the report of you and shall tremble and be in anguish because of you. Pause. Those things come to effect with Rahab at Jericho. Why does she save the spies? Why does she turn to God the people? She says, because we have heard of the things that have been done. This is the preamble for all the things that are going to happen with Joshua. It's a tone that is being set. Continue on verse 26. So I sent messengers through the wilderness of Kedmoth to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass through your land, and I will go only by the road, and I will turn aside neither to the right or to the left. You shall sell me food for money, that I may eat, and give me water for money, and I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot, as the sons of Esau, who live in the Seir, and the Moabites who live in Ar did for me, until I go over the Jordan and into the land the Lord our God has given to us. But Sihon, the king of Heshbon, would not let us pass by him. For the Lord your God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might give him into your hand, as he is this day. And the Lord said to me, Behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to take possession, that you may occupy his land. Then Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Jahaz. And the Lord our God gave him over to us, and we defeated him and his sons and all his people. And we captured all his cities at that time and devoted to destruction every city, men, women, and children. We left no survivors, only the livestock we took as spoils for ourselves, with the plunder of the cities we captured. From Arior, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, and from the city that is in the valley, as far as Gilead, there was not a city too high for us. The Lord our God gave all into our hands, only the lands of the sons of Ammon, who did not draw near, that is, to all the banks of the river Jabbok, and to the cities of the hill country, whatever the Lord our God had forbidden us. Here sits the beginning tone for all the conquering. Here sits this conquering of the land east of the Jordan, land that will become eventually Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh. And the tone starts with peace. It's interesting to see and think. The Lord tells Moses, go and take the land, I'm preparing it for you. But Moses starts with peace. Asking Sihon, can we just go through the land peaceably? Can we go through and see, you saw what we did with Esau, what we did with Moab. Can we not go through peaceably? We will pay for our food and our water. But the response is, no. I see up here the eventual but. That shows up in text. We want one thing, but something else happens. And that but is a hardened heart. Sihon has a hardened heart. Now, the text here talks about God hardening his heart to a degree, and that is true. There's a level of truth to that. That God allowed for his heart to be hardened. And if you want a little bit, maybe better understanding of what I'm talking about in this hardness, that it shows up into chapter 21 of Numbers. Here is the account of King Sihon being defeated. As Moses sends the messenger saying, when we pass through the land, we will go by and do all sorts of good things. Verse 23, but Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. He gathered all his people together and went out against Israel to the wilderness and came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok as far as the Ammonites. The border of the Ammonites was strong. Here you see a hardened heart. The better picture is painted. Not God corrupting somebody's heart, as is argued by those who want to come in and picture God as a villain. As God as someone evil that comes in and plays around men's hearts to make them choose evil over other things. No. God is allowing this corrupted heart, a heart that is made for defense, a heart that is made for doing their own thing, allows them to make the way for his own destruction. It's in similar aspect to Pharaoh. Because yes, as the text goes through the story of Exodus, that Pharaoh hardens his heart. It is only after, the text says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It is only after Pharaoh has hardened his own heart multiple times through. That is Pharaoh choosing to do things against God and against the word of the Lord and the things that have been proven over and over again that I am God and you need to submit to me. Here you see hardness allowing for promises to be kept. This is a means and a manner for the land to be taken, for this promise to be fulfilled. I'm using man's own desires, his own obstinance against them to allow these things to come. And again, you see God's promise to his people. You are nomads, you are not warriors, you do not have siege engines and all sorts of things, but I stand with you. I protect you. I have given this land to you. And as the text read through, we plundered these cities. We put everybody to death. We gained spoils. We conquered even the high cities. We did all this because of God's promise to his people. The destruction and plunder that comes through is total. It is absolute. We believe there's 3 different variations of these ideas of total destruction. There's this one, we get destruction of people and a provision of spoils. You have an utter destruction of completeness. There's nothing to be spoiled and gained at all. And And then there is selective destruction. We're killing all the men, but leave the women and children. You can kill all of these people, but I am sparing this one city or this one group of people or these certain things. Here is the manner of which all people to end lines, to stop these things because their time has come. I've given them chances to know me, to turn and worship, to acknowledge me as the authority, but they have not. They've chosen other gods. They've chosen their way, and the result is destruction and plunder. Which tells me an application: when God says it will be, it will be. When God says it will happen, I can take it to the bank. I know it will happen. There's a confidence that can come through. When God says, be baptized for the remission of your sins, and you will be saved, I can trust that is the case. Because he has proven over and over again, what will be, will be. He tells me how to be his child. That's what I need to do. So be ready to go when he says go. The people were ready to go when he said go. The people were ready to fight when he said fight. When God says it will be, it will be. So there's one more thing we got to talk about. I told you as we work through Deuteronomy, it does not do us any good to work through and just simply look at text and say, isn't that neat? I believe it's part of my job to come in and say, where is Jesus in the text? Where can we see or how can we apply Jesus into these stories? I don't think Jesus actually shows up in a physical, literal way in this side of the text. There's a lot of things that point towards Jesus throughout this story, the events in Deuteronomy 2. I think first off is an idea of Jesus journeyed through wilderness and had success with no death. It's that stark reminder to us of the difference between a people whose heart is not fully for God and a son who is absolutely devoted to him in all things. The people wandered through wilderness and death flocked over them. Entire generation died because of their sins and their obstinance. But yet Jesus journeyed through wilderness over and over again and never found death. He found success in life. And if Jesus can do it, I believe I can do it too. And I can only do it because of him, because of the Father, because he has given me what I need to succeed through it. He shows us what a true, faithful child of God can do and has the capability of doing, and how he can succeed in all things. He journeyed through wilderness and succeeded with no death. What you also get to see here is the fulfillment of the provisions. I really found verse 7 to be interesting and very applicable. The Lord your God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He knows you're going through his great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord has been with you. You have lacked nothing. Again, he provided for them the quail and the manna. He gave them bread. He gave them water and all things. But we know that Jesus is the true fulfillment of those things. He describes himself as the bread of life. And what he says over in John chapter 6 is so imperative to this very idea. Just a few verses in John chapter 6, pick up in verse 31. He says, our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. They say to him, Sir, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, nor believes in me shall never thirst. Here is the fulfillment of all these provisions. They are seeking, they are asking for God to provide, and he finally sends the Son to answer them. I am what you need. I am greater than the law because I am the fulfillment of it. I am greater than this perceived Messiah that you thought of. I am more than that. I am the King's servant. I am the King Redeemer. I am the fulfillment of all these provisions. I am your sustainer. So come and fill at my feet. I am the land of milk and honey and of promise. But you also see throughout this that God's justice and grace is ultimately fulfilled in Christ. Have you thought about God fulfilling promises as justice and grace? I've promised you this land, so in my justice I am giving it to you. I have promised you these things, and through my grace and mercy I am giving them to you. And it had boundaries to it, provisions put onto it for them in the land. You'll be blessed if you stay with me. You'll be cursed if you do not. But his justice and grace was ultimately fulfilled in Jesus. He took the judgment that you see throughout the law and that the people endured over and over again, and he put it on Christ. He paid the price for us, that we get to take advantage and joy and understanding through his true justice and grace that comes because of this. That it's fulfilled ultimately through our promises. But you also see throughout this that Jesus is also the greater Moses and the greater Joshua. Again, this is Moses writing to the people, reminding them of their past, reminding them of the things that are going on and the things that the Lord had spoken to them. And Jesus is the greater ultimate fulfillment of that. But as Joshua is the one who's going to lead them in the land to conquer, a great man, a very wise, wonderful individual, one of the few, I think, greatest heroes that you see throughout the Bible, one who I struggle to find any flaws or faults with. Jesus is even superior to him in all of that. Because Jesus conquered death. Jesus conquered sin. And he leads us into the true promised land. The land that is ultimately and fully ours. The ultimate promise that comes from God through Abraham. I'm going to give you a land, give you a people, and I gave you my son. So that you can have eternal life. Hope I'm not stretching too much. But this is where I do think you see Jesus throughout this chapter. And if you look honestly through the text, I think you see him there. As you can see him in every single chapter, because it all points to him. To show the superior Jesus to all. So as we just wrap up, Deuteronomy 2 teaches us that God sees our wilderness and walks us out and walks us through it. He keeps his promises to us and to others. He knows when it's time to move and when it's time to wait. And he always leads towards Jesus, towards the true promised land. That, my brothers and sisters, is Deuteronomy chapter 2. I hope that was a good way to digest and see and help you to get through. They are sometimes hard and troublesome books. Deuteronomy is not one we spend a lot of time in, but it is very relevant to us because it is so heavily quoted and used over in the New Testament. It's hard to understand the New Covenant without understanding things of the Old. And Deuteronomy is a great book to help us understand all the things that point towards Jesus. So if there's anybody tonight who has a lacking towards Jesus, whose life is still sitting in wilderness, who looks around and saying, I'm just lost in a place, and I'm looking for those promises to be fulfilled. He has said, here's the promise, here's the answer. It is the blood of my son. If you need to put it on right now, let's do so as we stand and as we sing.
I gave my life